What's up, folks, and welcome to Indie Ramble. So, it is retro-inspired platformer time again. I do love these. Platformers are still one of my favorite genres. And this is one that I have to admit I hadn't heard of before it came on my radar, even though it was kickstarted, which is kind of interesting. But I have been quite enjoying this, and I think fans of some of the recent modern retro platformers that have come out are really going to like this one. So, this is Bat Boy. And as I said, this was kickstarted. This game actually shares a lot in common with the modern retro classic platformer Shovel Knight. And I don't think that's a coincidence. They were both kickstarted, but you can tell playing this that it shares a lot in common with that and probably takes a lot of inspiration from it. And that is not a dunk, trust me, because Shovel Knight is absolutely sublime. And this thing does a lot of what it does, but very much with its own spin. So I'm going to show you this here. So yeah, so the idea behind this, there is a story here. There's a bunch of interesting characters that are all sports themed. This evil villain teleports to your world and is going to destroy it, but you end up pursuing him back into his world, parallel universe, to try to deal with him. Everything in this game is sports themed. The enemies are sports themed. Your colleagues are sports themed. You know, that's kind of the idea here. But you're doing it with in this sort of interesting medieval sort of fantasy world thing. It's very cool, and it's got a lot of personality and very much tongue-in-cheek and doesn't take itself too seriously, which is kind of cool. So, and I'm going to talk to the characters too much here just because I don't want to give too much away, because that's one of the key things of it. But as you can see, very much a retro-inspired platformer. You got your overworld here, and you got a bunch of different levels that you go in. Every boss that you kill in this game, or defeat at least, you don't really kill any of the bosses, they all will teach you a different skill that you're able to use. And as your name would imply, you are Bat Boy, and you are able to use your baseball-based abilities in order to defeat the different enemies. So I'm going to go into some of the earlier levels here and show you what this looks like. So as you can see, very NES inspired, has a little bit more graphical and audio flair than an actual NES could probably do. But it's very much of that era, and I think pays homage to that era quite well. And, well, you're a boy, and you got a bat. Yeah, pretty much. All of your colleagues in this are based off of different sports. So, you know, one's based around hockey, and others based around basketball, etc., etc. There's quite an interesting cast of characters in here who all very much have their own personalities to them, for sure. So you're going to go through the different levels. You have enemies that you have to take out. Now, this being the first level, some of the enemies are easy, but as you can see, some of them have very specific ways that you can take them out. And you have other little platforming mechanics as well. You'll have things that you have to bounce off of. You can hit things with your bat, including enemies, and use them as sort of a springboard in order to propel yourself forward, which you're going to have to do fairly often. As you go on as well, you'll earn several different abilities, and you can take these abilities back to prior levels. So I don't have all of them here, but I have a lot of them. So one of them is that you can sort of charge up your bat and spin it like that, and you can either jump off of it, it will damage enemies, you can recall it at any time, like Odin's Hammer, or Thor's Hammer. I said Odin's Hammer, didn't I? Oh boy. Okay. Yeah, so you can do that. You have the ability to do like you can do a little bubble thing that allows you very short period of invulnerability. You can use these basketballs that you can throw, and you don't get all these at the beginning. You've got to beat some different enemies to get through all of those and to unlock them all. And you also have the ability to do like a charge dash, and all of these can come in handy. And in the earlier levels, there are places where you will find you're not initially able to get to until you have those abilities. Like, for example, here. I can wall jump. I couldn't wall jump when I started the game. Now, here, okay, that's too bad. That looked like a secret, but sadly it's not. I've got a little bionic commando arm there. You get all these different abilities, which is really, really neat. You do have limited uses of them. At the bottom there, you have a green meter and a red meter. Red meter is your health. The green meter is your power ability, so you can only use them a certain number of times, but every time you get to a checkpoint, the meters refill for you. And you'll see along the bottom, there is a currency you can pick up in this, which you can use to buy some upgrades as well as specialty potions that you can use. I only have one potion unlocked right now, which does a whole bunch of damage in an area around you. You can... The interesting thing about those is those don't carry over between lives. So if you use one, you lose it, and you have to purchase it again. But you can purchase them from these little vending machines that are beside all of the different checkpoints in the game, which is kind of handy. So I'll show you this one. So that's what it does. It's kind of a, you know, a get out of a hard situation type thing. And every level has all three of these little vegetables in them. And if you can find them all, you can utilize those vegetables to... brew new potions later on, essentially. There's also shops in the game that you can access where you can use those for different helpful purposes. So, you know, a little bit of an upgrade system. Not really an RPG, but there are some elements of that in terms of upgrades and, you know, being able to give yourself more abilities. And I do like the fact that a lot of the earlier levels do have things that give you a reason to go back to them. So you can use some of the powers that you get to, again, get to points in the levels and get bonuses that you wouldn't have been able to before, or just get yourself around them faster. I like that. I like that they give you a reason to go back and forth between the different environments if you want, though you don't have to either. You know, if you don't want 100% this, you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that either. So, yeah, and you'll make your way through this, and at the end of every level is a boss, of course. And the bosses do get increasingly more difficult, but they all have patterns that you can learn, and if you use those in concert with some of the abilities that you'll learn, particularly things like the bubble shield and whatnot, I never found that I had too hard a time with them for the most part, at least to this point. I haven't finished the game yet, but I didn't have too much trouble with the bosses that I fought so far. That being said, though, it kind of looks like I'm sailing through this level here. Yeah, don't be fooled. This game definitely gets quite challenging later on. The levels, particularly, yes, I've already been here, so the thing that's in here, we're not going to see in my run. The game definitely does get challenging. The levels, particularly some of the platforming and timing challenges later on that's required. Oh yeah, this guy has a bat, so I actually can't hit the ball at him. I got to take him out first, and there we go. You'll also get gems if you chain enemy kills together, if you can do that. So here's the first boss. The bosses do all have little introductions and conversations that happen, but one nice quality of life thing is that if you've seen it already, you don't have to do it again. So if you're fighting a boss for a second time, or if you failed your first attempt at fighting a boss and you're coming back, doesn't matter, because you don't have to see it again. So it just keeps things sped along a little bit, which is nice. Now that boss was very easy. The later ones have a lot more health and sometimes multiple phases that you have to deal with, so that's something to keep in mind as well. Let's go to a slightly later level here, and I'll show you guys a little bit of what this looks like. The levels are all very different. They all have their nice visual flair, some nice parallax scrolling in the background there. The soundtrack is some really solid chiptunes. You know, this is overall a very well put together package. I like the presentation of it. It obviously runs well, it should, and I'm quite certain you could run this on potato hardware because of what it is, which is excellent, makes the game more accessible for people. And yeah, it's a nice little modern retro platformer with personality. And the thing that I like about it is, being a modern retro platformer, it has some of the modern quality of life improvements that just make games like this a lot less infuriating than their retro counterparts. For example, there is no live system in this. You know, the live system was something that they did back in the day when games could not be made very long due to memory limitations on cartridges, and they had to make them unbelievably difficult in order to get people to get a decent length of playtime out of them. But most modern games like this, now there are some that are designed that way, and there's nothing wrong with that at all, but most ones like this are not so much. They're designed more to be challenging, but they create their challenge in more modern ways. So for example, yeah, as I said, there's no live system. There's checkpoints, and when you die, you go back to the last checkpoint you were at. That's it. You can die as many times as you want in a level. It makes no difference. You can just keep retrying. You're never going to be arbitrarily forced to go back to the start of the level. However, you cannot save mid-level. So if you want to, you know, bail out in the middle of a level, then you are going to have to start it all over again. But you can see I died there, and it takes me back here. And it is kind of funny that this game is based around baseball, but it says strike one there. Don't be fooled by that. It will go up to however many times you die. Like, you can have a level where you're like strike 17, and it doesn't matter. So, this is baseball that kind of plays by its own rules, I guess. Let's say that. You know, but they had to keep the, they had to do what they could, I guess, with the analogies they had. So, that's fair enough. And yeah, so it's got checkpoints. It's, you know, the checkpoints are fairly generous. There's multiple per level. You don't have to worry about the live system. You know, you do have to rebuy the potions if you use them, but they're not very expensive. The game is quite liberal with money. Once you have picked up money once in a level, you are going to have to, you won't be able to pick it up a second time in that run. But you can grind. So if you want to finish a level and then come back and do it again after to get more money to either buy upgrades or for something else like that, you can do that if you want. The game won't punish you for that. So if you're never going to find yourself in a position where you're like, oh, geez, I can't progress, or I'm effectively soft locked because I'm at this really hard point and I don't have the money to buy any potions, and I really need potions if I'm going to be able to get past this next section. No, it doesn't matter. The game will make it easier on you for that, which I always like. And yeah, the levels are varied, the enemies are varied. There actually are quite a number of different enemies in this, and variants of existing enemies, which is nice. Some of the platforming I have found to be a little bit frustrating, only because, so I'm playing with an Xbox One controller like I usually do. Now this is the wireless PC version. It's not Bluetooth, it uses the actual Microsoft adapter, which generally is supposed to give pretty much an input lag-free experience. It's always been questionable whether or not you get that fully lag-free experience. And, well, I have had several platforming sections in this I've had to redo multiple times and gotten rather frustrated because, you know, you have that moment in a game where you're like, I friggin' know I made that jump or that I timed that particular moment right. But the game's like, nope, you didn't. Yeah, I've had that happen a number of times in this. So that could be the game's fault. It could be my wireless controller's fault. It could... I'm fully willing to admit it could be my fault. You know, I ain't as young as I used to be. So that may be a reason too, but the thing is, every one of those frustrations and challenges I overcame, because even when the game was setting me back a decent clip in terms of checkpointing, it wasn't that long. It was like, okay, do a section that you did, you know, do a 2-minute section that you did before, and every time I did that section I got a little better at it, so it got, you know, faster to do every time, right? Things like that. It's definitely it's more forgiving that way, but I really like the balance games like this in Shovel Knight Strike because they're challenging, yes, and you know, they don't make themselves overly easy. They're still challenging. They'll still, you know, require some real effort on your part in order to sort of best, but they're not petty about it, and they're not mean, and they don't, and they're not mean because they don't have to be, because they don't need... They're able to make a game of decent length in this day and age without requiring, you know, 17 million gnarly encounters, because that's all, you know, because you can't fit a decent number of levels onto the cartridge. You know, that's just not a problem in this day and age. So I can really appreciate that, and I like that some developers have been able to strike that balance between, you know, old school but also modern enough that it won't turn people off. You know, there's a lot of people who love their old school NES platformers, but a lot of those games, if you take the nostalgia tinted glasses off, are they're pretty rough. And a lot of them are very, very cheap and, you know, as I said, very petty in their design. But that's not the case here. So what you get is a game that looks like an old school game and has some of that old school quirky personality. We don't get to see that much in modern titles. And it'll challenge you, but not so much that you'll quit it in frustration. I mean, some people will, but most people won't. You know, this is a platformer. If you put in a little bit of practice, you'll definitely be able to finish. So that's always a good thing, because some of those old ones, even some that are considered absolute classics, I never finished back in the day because I was just like, nah, this has reached the point where it's just too much for me. But that's not what this one's done at all. I do intend to finish this. And it's fairly lengthy as well. Like, it says I'm only 46% through it on my save. Now, that probably includes a bunch of optional stuff. There are some side quests and other optional objectives in this that you can choose to pursue if you want. So you probably won't get that completion to 100% in order to actually, if you just want to finish the story of the game. But, you know, there's lots here to keep you busy if you want. And, you know, this is not a 2-hour experience or something like that. This has got a fully fleshed out campaign and world in it. And, yeah, it's been a really pleasant surprise, you know. Like I said, despite being kickstarted, I never heard of this game before it came across my radar from their PR people. And I was like, looking at it, and I was like, wow, you know, this kind of looks like a Shovel Knight type thing. And I adore Shovel Knight, so let's give it a go. And it really is like that. Is it as good as Shovel Knight? I mean, that's going to be subjective. I think this involves a bit more precision platforming and stuff than I'd prefer compared to Shovel Knight. But this is still excellent. I mean, Shovel Knight is an extremely... that's a tall bar, you know, that one. And you don't have to be as good as that to still be a good game. And I do think this is quite good. And yeah, the fact that I'm willing to finish it, I mean, you know, if I get a game for Indie Ramble and I say, yeah, I'm going to finish this, then to me, at least, that's usually a good sign of quality on it. So this has been a lot of fun. And if you won't sell you on modern retro platformers if you're not already, but if you are, I think you should get this without question and you'll have a really good time with it. So yeah, that is Bat Boy. When this video goes live, it's launch day for it. So go check it out. I've been having a great time with it, and I think you will too if you're into this kind of thing. So thank you guys very much for watching. I do appreciate it. If you liked what you saw here, please do all the normal YouTube things. They really do help the channel out a great deal. And leave a comment down below. Tell me, what do you think of this? You know, are there other modern retro platformers that you're into? I'm always interested in hearing more about those. And, you know, were you a fan of Shovel Knight? Because, like I said, if you were, I think you should just get this without question. But I'd be curious what you think, if you are a fan of it, versus how this looks. And as always, you can follow me over at twitch.tv/pxabstraction for multiple variety streams a week. I cover other indie games over there, as well as actual retro stuff, including a bunch of things that are better suited to streaming than YouTube. We have a fantastic community there, and I would love to see you be a part of it. Thanks again, everybody, and I'll see you on the next Indie Ramble. You folks have yourselves a good one. Take her easy.